In the heart of Lower Silesia, where old roads wind between grey hills and abandoned mines, stands the town of Walbrzych. It was as if he was frozen between times, preserving the imprints of all the epochs that had passed through his land. Poland had been through a lot, but this place always seemed alien, as if it had been transported from another reality, where darkness continued to breathe underground, stirring in the depths that had long been forgotten. When the wind passed through the narrow streets, it brought with it a strange smell, either damp or metal. The old people said that it was the spirits of war that reminded them of themselves, but the young people just waved them off, not wanting to hear about anything related to those years. But there were others too, those who searched in the fog of the past for answers that were better not to find. Adam Kowalski was one of them, an engineer by training, a dry, rational person, without a penchant for romance or fantasy. However, he was always drawn to places where the earth hides secrets. He did not believe in the legends about the golden train that disappeared at the end of the war, considering them to be just another fairy tale for tourists, but working with ground-penetrating radar required precision, not faith. When, in early autumn, he received an offer from a private research group funded by an unknown charitable foundation, he accepted more out of curiosity than greed. The area near Walbrzych was known for a network of underground tunnels dating back to the Reich, and if there really could be a block of iron almost 100 meters long, it was there. The team assembled quickly. Several geologists, a technical operator, 2 security guards, and a historian appointed as a consultant. Their camp was located at the foot of the hill, where the radar showed an unnatural void under the ground. There was silence at night, as if the earth itself was holding its breath, watching them. The autumn rains poured down, turning the soil into a viscous mush, and the machinery sank into the mud. But Adam worked with obsession. Every day brought new data, and gradually a long strip of metal appeared on the computer screen, extending deeper. When the device first detected the abnormal density of the object, the silence in the tent hung heavy, as before a thunderstorm. By all indications, it was a railway structure, smooth, symmetrical, with rigid outlines of wagons. But the depth was surprising, almost 30 meters below the surface. Adam didn't show surprise, just said quietly that the data needed to be checked. The others, on the contrary, began to speak louder, excitedly, feeling how the myth suddenly took on flesh. Excavations began 3 days later. First, the top layer of soil was removed. Then the collapsed concrete arches were exposed. It looked as if someone had deliberately filled up the entrance. Old German plaques, faded to indistinguishability, lay among the stones. The words Achtung Gas could be read on one of them. One of the workers wanted to stop working, but Adam insisted on continuing, arguing that after so many years there could be no gas left. He acted cautiously, almost reverently, like a surgeon dissecting a body to understand the cause of death. When the shovels finally hit a thick layer of concrete, it became clear that this was not a collapse, but a sealed barrier. The surface was smooth, with prints of wooden planks, which were poured into the formwork. Someone built it carefully, expertly. After breaking through the first opening, they expected to see a blockage, but instead a narrow shaft opened up, going down at an angle. There was a chill coming from the depths, as if from the belly of a mountain. Adam went down first, holding a lantern in his hand, and step by step approached the wall, on which strange signs could be seen. They were German words, carefully engraved. Nur für Reich, for the Reich only. Then there was a corridor lined with metal slabs. The air was heavy, musty but dry, as if the ventilation had once worked. There were traces of soot and rust on the walls, as if something had burned here, but there were no signs of a fire. At the end of the passage were massive steel doors. They looked surprisingly intact, only covered with a grey coating of time. The locks were torn off, but the doors wouldn't budge. Adam examined the seams, looking for points for the tool, and only then noticed the symbol, barely discernible, but still clear, a black sun surrounded by runes. When they managed to open the door, icy air blew through the crack. In the light of the lantern, a huge shadow appeared behind them, the body of a train standing in an underground hangar. At first, no one believed their eyes. It was a train that had been preserved almost perfectly, only covered with a layer of dust and oxide. Car after car stretched along the concrete walls like dead guards. Each one had faded eagle and swastika emblems, and underneath them were the words Deutsche Reichsbahn. The train was silent, but his presence was felt almost physically. The air vibrated like before an earthquake. It seemed like the darkness inside the hangar was waiting to be woken up. The team began to inspect the wagons. One was a cargo truck, the other was closed, without windows. The metal locks were sealed, as if someone wanted to permanently isolate the contents. Traces of sealant and fresh welding were found on the third car, and more than 70 years have passed since the war. Adam decided to document everything before opening it. He felt that there was more than just history behind this find, but something deeper and more dangerous. Photographs, measurements, reports, everything was recorded with meticulous precision. But when one of the workers accidentally touched a metal box against the wall, a short, low rumble sounded inside the hangar, as if someone from inside had answered the call. The echo echoed through the vaults, and everyone who was there had the feeling that something was moving under their feet. Later, they opened the first container. The metal yielded reluctantly, as if resisting. Inside were cylindrical capsules made of thick glass, covered with a cloudy film. Each of them was filled with a thick, viscous liquid that looked like dark oil. Silhouettes emerged through the layer of turbidity human bodies, motionless, with outstretched limbs. One of the faces turned to the glass seemed too alive. The eyes were open. There was a sign on the wall next to it that read, Project Morgenrot. Below it is a drawing covered with German words and symbols. Adam could make out the phrase, Neue Evolution, Phase 3, among the lines. The third phase. He felt cold. That evening, he was trying to figure out what this project meant. A historian who worked with them claimed that he had heard mentions of a certain Project Dawn in secret archives related to experiments on human improvement. There were rumors that in the last months of the war, Reich scientists were trying to create something that would survive defeat, a biological entity devoid of fear and compassion. But all this was considered a myth, not confirmed by documents. Now the myth lay before them in iron sarcophagi. A storm broke out over the camp at night. Thunder boomed like gunshots. The wind howled, bending the tents. Adam was awake. He was sitting at the laptop screen, looking at the photos he had taken, enlarging the frames of the capsules. In one picture, he noticed something that had not been there during the day, thin scratches on the inside of the glass. It was as if someone had run their nails over the surface from the inside, trying to get out. The lines were fresh, uneven, and there were micro-cracks in the corners of the glass. He couldn't believe his eyes. He decided that it was a camera defect, but the feeling of anxiety wouldn't let go. At dawn, he sent the data to the customer via an encrypted channel. The answer came quickly, too quickly. Suspend work. The commission will arrive. No signature, no explanation. By lunchtime, military trucks arrived on the territory. People in uniform without insignia silently set up fences, kicked out workers, and seized equipment. No one explained anything. Adam was told to sign non-disclosure papers. He knew it was pointless to argue. When he left the excavation site, the hangar was already being sealed again, as if trying to erase the traces of the discovery itself. A few days have passed. The newspapers wrote a short note. A wagon from the Second World War has been discovered in the vicinity of Walbrzych. Not a word about the train, not a mention of the project. Officially, nothing happened. But at night, a frame appeared on the network. A blurred photo of the capsule, where a human face with open eyes could be seen through the cloudy liquid. The picture was deleted an hour later, but those who saw it remembered it forever. Adam disappeared on the 7th day. His house was empty. All that remained on the table was a notebook with notes and one handwritten sheet. They are not dead. They're waiting. Silence returned to Walbrzych. People tried not to talk about what had happened, as if they were afraid to attract attention. But at night, as the wind swept over the hills, someone swore they could hear a distant rumble, like the movement of wheels underground. When a week passed after Adam Kowalski's disappearance, there was a thick, viscous silence in the air over Walbrzych, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The old mining valley, where work had recently been in full swing, was plunged into darkness again. Only a few traces of machinery remained on the damp ground, and the concrete slab blocking the entrance looked like a tombstone over something that shouldn't have been disturbed. Locals avoided the place, and the rare reporters who came in search of a sensation found only a fenced-off area with a warning about radiation. The sign looked fake. The paint was fresh, the lettering unnaturally smooth. It seemed that she was hung rather so that no one would ask questions. Adam disappeared as if he had disappeared. His phone wasn't answering, and his car was parked outside his house. There were no signs of a struggle in the apartment. There was no blood, no disorder, but the air in it smelled strangely, a mixture of ozone and rust, as if something electric had recently been turned on here. There was a notebook on the floor, open to the page where he wrote by hand. "They are not sleeping. They remember." There was a line under this phrase, as if he wanted to finish it, but didn't have time. The police quickly closed the case. The official version is that she disappeared for personal reasons. No one wanted to connect him with the discovery near Walbrzych, although everyone knew that it was directly related. No one from his team wanted to talk either. One worker went to visit relatives in Gdansk. The other was hospitalized with a nervous breakdown. The historian who accompanied the expedition disappeared almost simultaneously with Adam. Only the technician was called back for questioning, but he answered the same thing. "I didn't see anything." In autumn, a thick fog hung over the city. It didn't dissipate for weeks, as if something underground was exhaling it out. People complained about the hum at night, similar to the distant movement of trains, although the nearest branch line had long been abandoned. The iron beneath the ground seemed to be moving again, but no one wanted to believe that the train that Adam found continued to live its life. 3 months after the excavation, a folder marked "Top Secret" arrived in Warsaw. It contained only a few reports, photographs, and a short, unsigned letter. The first picture shows a steel carriage, half opened, inside of which capsules could be seen immersed in a thick liquid. On the other is the tunnel walls, which have new cracks, as if someone was pressing on the metal from the inside. The report ended with the line, "The facility is closed. Protocol 13 is activated." No one knew what that meant. But a few weeks later, a strange incident was recorded in the archives of the Ministry of Defense. One of the warehouses near Wrocław caught fire, destroying some of the archival documents from the war. The official reason is a short circuit. However, surveillance cameras recorded a flash of light before the fire, as if someone had turned on a powerful searchlight. A moment before, in one of the frames, the figure of a man in a long raincoat could be seen walking along a row of metal containers. When the flame flared up, the image distorted and then went out. Meanwhile, small but disturbing things began to happen in Walbrzych. Workers hired to reconstruct an old tunnel in another part of the city said that knocks could be heard underground. Some claimed that it was precipitation, others that they heard footsteps. One young engineer who came down to check the equipment did not return. He was found only a day later, sitting on the ground, with an empty look and his hands covered with writing. He kept repeating one phrase, "They're coming." Rumors began to circulate about Adam's discovery. It was said that the train was not a transport, but a laboratory, that it wasn't carrying gold, but the bodies of people, not dead, but not alive either, that substances capable of preserving life without consciousness were placed inside them. People remembered old German documents about biological experiment programs, but no one had ever seen words like new evolution before. In winter, Warsaw's archival circles started talking about the Dawn Project. Several historians have received anonymous letters with attachments, scans of drawings, tables, notes, presumably of German origin. In the margins of one document was the signature, Dr. Erich Huldner. This man was considered dead in the 45th year, but now his name has surfaced again. His notes mentioned words about restoring order and cleansing humanity from the fear of death. At the end was a formula made up of chemical symbols and biological symbols, and under it was the word phase dre. Those who received these documents soon stopped contacting us. One was found dead in his own apartment, with his laptop turned off and his phone immersed in a glass of water. The second one went to Germany and disappeared. The third, a professor from Gdansk, ended up in a psychiatric clinic a week later. He kept repeating the same phrase, "We are not the first to find them. We just woke you up." In the spring, in a small town near Walbrzych, local children found a strange object on the riverbank. It was a piece of metal, smooth, with an engraved symbol in the form of a black sun. Inside it was a mechanism similar to the heart of a pump. When they tried to open it, the metal began to heat up and then crumbled into ashes. The police took the remains, but a day later, the military cordoned off the area where the object was found. No one else went there. Meanwhile, someone started leaving messages on the forums of World War II researchers. A user named Alpha Morgenrot posted fragments of text written in Old German. One of them talked about sleeping constructs that should awaken when the dawn of humanity is replaced by its shadow. The files were deleted after a few hours, but each time new ones appeared, as if someone was persistently trying to warn or intimidate. In June, an unknown journalist published an investigation in which he claimed that Adam Kowalski was not just an engineer, but an employee of a closed project related to the study of biotechnology during the Reich. He assumed that Kowalski could have been hired not by chance, but as a person capable of understanding the structure of the devices found in the hangar. According to the author, his disappearance was not accidental. A week after the publication, the journalist's website ceased to exist, and he himself, according to friends, went abroad and did not get in touch. Meanwhile, strange electromagnetic pulses began to be detected all over Poland. Their source could not be determined. Sometimes they lasted seconds, sometimes minutes. Each time at the moment of the splash, the instruments recorded a slight wobble of the earth under Walbrzych. The authorities attributed this to seismic activity, but those who were there knew that the earth there was dead, stony, without movement. At night, a glow was noticed in the vicinity of the city, a soft, reddish glow like a reflection of fire, but without smoke. People who saw him complained of tinnitus, nausea, and headaches. One man who lived a kilometer from the old tunnel said that at night he saw a figure standing motionless by the hill. Tall, thin, she seemed to glow from within. As he got closer, the figure disappeared. In the morning, he found footprints on the ground long, disproportionate, with clear claw marks. In July, a group of diggers decided to descend into a closed hangar, despite warnings. They were experienced researchers, accustomed to danger, and even filmed their hike on camera. The last entry, found later, lasted 5 minutes. The footage shows them walking down the corridor, lighting the way with lanterns. Then the image shakes, and a low sound is heard, like the roar of metal. One of them turns the camera, and for a moment a reflection flashes in the dark, a human face, but with eyes glowing from within. After that, the camera crashes, and the sound stops. None of them returned. 2 days after the diggers disappeared, a thick, suffocating smell came to the surface, similar to a mixture of burning and decomposition. The military arrived again and completely filled the entrance with concrete. Now this place looked like just a part of the hill, but those who lived nearby swore that at night the rhythm could still be heard underground, slow as breathing, as if something huge was living there and waiting to be rediscovered. Rumors about the Dawn Project have spread far beyond Poland. In Germany, the Czech Republic, and even Austria, archivists and historians who worked with Reich documents began to disappear. Some thought it was a coincidence. Others thought it was the beginning of a sweep. But one man, who introduced himself as a former German intelligence officer, posted a short video online. It shows a laboratory corridor illuminated by white lamps and a camera slowly approaching the capsule. Inside is a human body. It's breathing, very slowly, but breathing. The video was deleted after 20 minutes, and the account was blocked. But the copies remained. People were discussing, arguing, shouting about falsification, but some people recognized the details. The same symbols, the same inscription. Project Morgenrot. By autumn, the military appeared around Walbrzych again. Roads were blocked, and communication became unstable. Residents were told that geological work was underway, but at night there were flashes of light on the horizon, steady, pulsating. Their rhythm resembled a heartbeat, and in the archives on the outskirts of Warsaw, in a locked room without windows, an old suitcase was gathering dust, in which Adam Kowalski's notes were kept. There was a diagram among the pages, the one he had taken in the hangar. There was an inscription written in pencil at the bottom: "A new evolution will begin with darkness." It took almost a winter before Adam Kowalski's name came up again. It happened at the beginning of the new year, when an undocumented patient appeared in one of the clinics near Poznan. He came by himself, in dirty clothes, with eyes full of unspeakable horror. When asked who he was and where he came from, he did not answer anything. "I just asked for water and paper." When the doctor gave him a sheet and a pen, he wrote 2 words: Anna Riedel. It was the name of the historian who disappeared with him. The doctors decided that he was suffering from amnesia. He was placed in a separate room, but on the second night, the nurse on duty noticed that the man was not sleeping. He was sitting by the window and quietly whispering something in German, although his documents indicated that he was Polish. In the morning, a strange smell was found in the ward, acrid like old oil. On the wall, at the head of the bed, someone wrote with his finger the phrase, "They go to the light." A week later, it became known that it really was Adam Kowalski. The prints matched, but no one could explain what had happened to him over the months. He couldn't remember where he was, couldn't even remember his own address. Doctors noted strange changes. The pulse is slow, the body temperature is below normal, and the pupils react unnaturally. At times, he would fall into a trance-like state and utter a set of phrases as if memorized. Phase 3 is completed. Dawn is near. The darkness breathes inside. Soon he was transferred to a closed ward, but people in civilian clothes started following him. At night, when the doctor on duty left the room, the cameras recorded a brief flashing of light. When the guards arrived, the bed was empty. The windows are intact. The doors are locked. There are traces of rust on the sheets, similar to handprints. There is one object on the floor, a metal token with an engraved sign of the Black Sun. After Kowalski's disappearance, a series of events began that resembled a chain reaction. Disappearances of people connected with the project were recorded all over Poland. One of the geologists working on the excavation disappeared on the road between Krakow and Lodz. His car was found near the forest. The engine was running, the headlights were on, but the driver's seat was empty. There was a piece of paper on the dashboard with one phrase, "He's awake." Meanwhile, activity was again noticed in Walbrzych. Locals said that shadows ran over the hill where the hangar was sealed at night. Someone said that he saw the figure of a man with a lantern, similar to Kowalski. Others swore they heard his voice whispering out of the darkness, but when people came there in the morning, they found no traces. Only the ground was strangely soft, as if someone was pushing it out from the inside. At the same time, in Warsaw, in the basement of one of the universities, an old archivist found a box of documents that no one knew about. Yellowed folders, signatures in German, and one envelope with a photograph inside. The picture shows a laboratory, a group of people in white coats, and among them a man who looks remarkably like Adam, only the photo is dated 1944. The caption read, "Dr. Holdner and the project team." When the archivist tried to make a copy, his computer crashed, and 3 days later he was found dead, with an expression of horror on his face. There was the same picture on his desk, but all the faces on it were charred, as if someone had burned them with fire. In the spring, everything began to change rapidly. At first, the lights at the houses closest to that area began to go out. Then there were power failures throughout the region. That same night, a strange light appeared over the hills, thick, white gold, similar to the northern lights. People ran out into the streets, filmed, shouted, but after a few minutes the lights went out, and a deathly darkness hung over the ground. In the morning, the military again cordoned off the area. At the official level, this was explained by an atmospheric phenomenon. But one eyewitness, a former soldier, claimed to have seen something else. According to him, for a moment, a cloud of steam rose from the ground, and in this light he saw the contours, not of a car, not of a person, but something in between. It stood motionless, as if listening to the world, and then disappeared into thin air. Meanwhile, unexplained cases began to occur in different cities. People who had not previously known each other reported dreams where they saw the same scenes: a tunnel, metal doors, a rumble, and a look from inside the capsule. Someone claimed that after such dreams, strange spots appeared on the skin, like burns. Doctors could not explain the origin, and the patients themselves said they were hearing an inner call. In Warsaw, a journalist working on the Kowalski case received an anonymous message. "If you want to know the truth, go to Lesna Guru." It was an abandoned mine near the old hangar. She went there at night, with a camera and a dictaphone. Later, her car was found on a country road. The engine was running, the door was open, but the journalist herself was not there. The camera was on the seat, and the last recording was inside. The picture shows a corridor leading down. The camera is shaking, and a heavy breathing noise is heard. Then a faint glow appears, not a lantern, but a soft pulsing light from inside the walls. In the center of the frame is a metal capsule, similar to those seen before, only now it's empty. There are handprints on the inside of the glass. The sound of footsteps is heard from afar. Then the image goes out. A few weeks later, the frequencies coming from the Walbrzych area were recorded in the radio laboratories. The signals were repeated at regular intervals, like a heartbeat. Some scientists suggested that this was a natural geomagnetic phenomenon, but the frequency spectrum was too precise, as if someone had transmitted a code. When the signals were converted into graphic form, an image appeared, a circle inside which lines intersected, forming a symbol of the sun. In the same summer, a temporary exhibition about underground projects of the Third Reich was opened in one of the museums in Germany. Among the exhibits are recovered documents about an unknown operation called Rückkehr, which translated as return. One of the pages mentioned the term Phase 3, and the phrase, "The golden path will open when dawn becomes darkness." No one paid any attention to these words until they noticed that the exhibit had suddenly disappeared, along with the curator of the exhibition. Soon after, mass cattle disappearances began to occur in a Polish village near Walbrzych. People found only footprints, deep, uneven, as if a heavy mechanism had passed through the ground. Some claimed to have seen shadows moving at night without sound. One farmer swore that he heard a rumble under his feet, as if someone was rolling an iron structure on the ground. Rumors began to return to the city. Someone said that the Project Dawn was not stopped in the 45th year, that some of the scientists were evacuated and their descendants continued to work in new laboratories, that they were looking for a way to awaken what they had created. And now, after Kowalski and his team had uncovered the concrete, they had triggered a mechanism that was supposed to remain underground forever. In the summer, columns of military equipment drove along local roads. People from the nearest villages were taken out for a while, explaining everything with construction work. But those who remained told of nighttime explosions and bright flashes of light, as if someone was fighting with something underground. And then everything went quiet. No lights, no noise, only a strange chill, as if the earth itself had frozen from the inside. The forests around Walbrzych turned yellow ahead of time. The wind carried the smell of iron and ozone. In the middle of August, an envelope arrived in Warsaw again without a return address. There's a photo inside. Adam Kowalski was standing on it, or someone who looked like him. His face was pale and his eyes were empty. He was standing in front of a wall that had black sun symbols painted on it. There was a caption under the photo. "The phase is completed." On the same day, a short audio file appeared on the internet, consisting of a humming sound similar to a heartbeat. When the frequency was slowed down and run through the spectrogram, the words appeared in it. "We're awake. Dawn is coming." When autumn covered Walbrzych with cold rain, the area where the train hangar stood looked dead. The trees lost their foliage, and the ground became viscous, as if the earth itself absorbed moisture. But beneath the surface, something was happening that no one could explain. Geophysical stations recorded strange anomalies, vibrations of the earth that defy either seismology or the known laws of physics. People living nearby reported that at night they felt trembling in their bodies, dizziness, as if someone else's heart was beating in their chest. At this time, Adam Kowalski appeared again. Not the man he was known to be. He was thin, pale, and had expressionless eyes, as if something alien was looking through them. He did not speak, did not smile, did not breathe normally. The doctors who watched him noted that his pulse had almost disappeared, and his breathing was barely noticeable. But every time he tried to get up, the ground seemed to vibrate in time with his steps. His presence affected everything around him. Appliances went out of order, lamps flickered, and the wind began to glide through the streets in strange eddies. A few days later, new specialists arrived at the hangar, biologists, engineers, and military analysts. No one could explain exactly what had happened underground, but everyone understood that something more had been uncovered than just a train or a laboratory. There was a smell of metal and chemicals in the air, and the tunnel walls, judging by the sensors, exuded a weak magnetic field. The devices recorded fluctuations in temperature and pressure, incomprehensible radio signals that repeated the rhythm of the heartbeat. The first thing that the experts noticed was the empty capsules. They were standing as before, but there was no more liquid in them. There were prints inside the glass, as if someone had stretched out their arms, and the thin lines of scratches formed strange symbols. Some researchers who studied ancient runic inscriptions claimed that this was something like a warning, but they could not decipher the meaning. It soon became clear that the capsules were not just vessels. They were a kind of storages for biological matter capable of self-reproduction and consciousness change. Those who conducted experiments in the 44th year were trying to create a form of life that could outlive humanity, be manipulated and autonomous at the same time. Now, it seemed to have awakened. Adam was standing at the entrance to the hangar. His body was motionless, but there was a faint glow coming from inside, which could be felt by touch. Every step he took seemed to activate a mechanism underground. After a week of observation, the scientists noticed strange changes. The metal doors, which were considered hermetically sealed, began to vibrate, emitting a low hum. The instruments recorded an uneven increase in temperature. At night, the staff heard groans similar to human ones, but at the same time distorted, unnatural. Sometimes the hum turned into a low whisper that seemed to come from inside their own heads. Some who stayed in the hangar the longest claimed that they saw movements. Not people, not animals, but something in between. Silhouettes sliding along the walls, disappearing in the light of lanterns. A month after waking up, one of the biologists conducting experiments with capsule analysis disappeared under mysterious circumstances. His laboratory room was locked, the windows were closed, and a faint but pungent smell of metal was coming from the ventilation. All that remained on the table was a note. The phase is completed. Dawn is coming. Locals began to notice strange changes. Children and adults complained of nightmares where they saw long corridors, capsules, silhouettes standing motionless in the dark. Sometimes in the morning they had bluish spots on their skin, resembling burns, or small scars in the form of lines and symbols similar to those on the capsules. The scientists who stayed in Walbrzych began to realize that the Rassvet Project was not just an experiment, but a complex system. The metal structures, capsules and train worked as a single unit. When they were opened, the system was activated, and now it has begun to affect the living. Those who were influenced changed slowly, and their perception of reality and time began to shift. After 2 months of observations, one of the cameras recorded movement around the hangar when no one was there. The metal vibrated, the capsules glowed, and shadows appeared from inside the glass human shapes, but not quite dense. They moved without touching the floor, as if they were floating. One of the employees tried to approach, but the air around him was sucked in, and he fell, losing consciousness. When he woke up, he couldn't remember how much time had passed, and his memory of the events became fragmented. The military, who arrived to observe, began to record anomalies in the radio frequencies. The signals repeated the rhythms of human breathing and heartbeat, but with time shifts. Once, they even distinguished the phrase, "A new life has begun." By autumn, the influence of dawn became obvious. People who lived a kilometer away from the hangar complained of headaches, disorientation, and a sense of something huge and alien. The forest around the hill has lost birds. Animals have disappeared. In the place where the ground was, footprints appeared, as if something heavy was moving under the surface. The scientists realized that they couldn't just close the hangar. The system activated on its own, and each intervention provoked a response. Attempts to block the power supply and turn off the devices ended in failures. Even military methods, concrete blocks, metal doors, could not keep what was now considered alive. One late evening, when snow began to fall on Walbrzych, Adam reappeared. His movements became less human. He didn't speak, but his eyes were shining. Those who watched him felt his presence changing the space around them. The metal trembled, the air became heavy, and every breath was difficult. It was then that it became clear that the Dawn Project was not just an experiment. It was an attempt to create a new form of life independent of the conditions on the surface. The capsules, the train, and the hangar were all part of a complex biological and mechanical network that could adapt, awaken consciousness, and interact with humans. Events were accelerating. Soon, the first tests showed that the creatures from the capsules are capable of independent activity. They began to get out of the hangar, moving through the underground tunnels, slowly at first, carefully, then faster and faster. People who tried to observe them disappeared. Some returned days later, but their eyes were empty and their memories distorted. Walbrzych has once again become the epicenter of mysteries. The authorities tried to hide all the evidence, but the locals knew that something alien, huge and omnipresent was breathing under the hill, and no one could predict when the dawn would come out. When winter gave way to early spring, Walbrzych seemed alive but dead at the same time. The city breathed the usual bustle, but there was a tense silence in the air. Those who knew the truth understood that there was a life going on under the hill that no one should know about. People from the area where the hangar stood complained of dizziness, weakness, and strange visions. They saw silhouettes in the fog, heard a heartbeat-like hum, and felt a pressure, as if something huge was watching them from underground. The dawn system continued to expand. The metal train, the capsules, and the hangar were all a single organism. What was once considered an object of military research now had its own consciousness. It reacted to the presence of people, adapted to the conditions, and learned to predict movements, increasing its influence on the psyche of those who were nearby. Scientists recorded an increase in electromagnetic anomalies, the appearance of radio signals that repeated the rhythms of breathing and footsteps, as well as sound vibrations that caused panic. Adam Kowalski remained the central figure. He was no longer a man in the usual sense. His body was like a vessel for the energy coming from the system. Every step he took was accompanied by a wobble of the earth, and his gaze caused the instruments to malfunction. The people around him experienced strange states, from amnesia to bouts of terror when reality began to distort. His presence awakened the dark essence of the system, and now it seemed that he had become a conduit between it and the outside world. Unexplained phenomena began to occur on the surface. The river flowing nearby changed its course. Its water glowed with a strange golden light at night. Animals avoided the area around the hangar, and many locals noted the disappearance of birds and insects. Agricultural lands withered for no apparent reason, and plants acquired strange shapes and colors, as if they were exposed to an unknown field. With the increasing activity of the dawn, the world began to learn about its existence. Short videos, photos, and audio recordings describing the strange phenomena appeared on social networks and forums. Users reported vibrations of the earth, footsteps in empty rooms, light coming from tunnels, and human silhouettes that appear for a moment and disappear. Each message was deleted after hours, but copies spread and created rumors, scaring people. The military has again stepped up the protection of the territory. Additional roadblocks were built. Restrictions on entry and communication were introduced. But the dawn was beyond their control. The metal from which the hangar was built vibrated, and the capsules began to move underground, not obeying physical laws. Internal sensors detected fluctuations in matter and time. Objects disappeared and appeared in other places. Some experts called it the space disturbance effect, while others called it a manifestation of the system's consciousness. Meanwhile, residents of nearby villages began to report sudden disappearances. They went into the woods or up a hill and never came back. Some found footprints on the ground that looked like footprints, but were too long to belong to a human. Others saw nightlights that looked like flashes coming from underground, and heard a low rumble, repeating the rhythm, as if the earth itself was breathing. Scientists were trying to get a picture of what was happening. They came to the conclusion that the Project Dawn is not just an experiment, but a system capable of changing the structure of living and inanimate, creating a new form of existence. Metal structures, capsules, and a train were all part of a single network that could adapt, evolve, and influence people's psyche and biology. Adam became a kind of mediator. He could direct the activity of the system, but at the same time he lost his human qualities. His mind was intertwined with an alien entity, and every time he was near the capsules, a faint glow emanated from them. The staff watching him began to notice identical visions: long corridors, steel doors, capsules with human silhouettes that were moving and trying to get out. As the system expanded, its new abilities began to manifest. She could influence memory, cause illusions, create images and sounds that do not exist in reality. Those who stayed in the hangar the longest faced their own fears, saw the faces of the disappeared people, and heard their whispers. Some went crazy, others disappeared without a trace. The local authorities tried to hide what was happening, but the rumors spread too fast. Journalists who tried to investigate the strange events disappeared. Those who returned could not tell the truth. Words slipped from their lips, memory fragmented, and fear paralyzed. Scientists began to look for a way to limit the activity of the system. They developed methods for suppressing the electromagnetic field, blocking capsules, and sealing hangars. But each step they took only activated the new functions of the dawn. The metal was moving, the capsules were glowing, and the system was adapting to the isolation attempts. By the middle of spring, it became clear, the dawn cannot be stopped by conventional means. It was a living entity combining biology and technology, possessing consciousness and the ability to reproduce itself. Any intervention provoked a response. Those who were too close were subjected to changes in their psyche and biology. It was then that scientists realized the global scale of the threat. The dawn could go beyond Walbrzych, infecting all living and inanimate things around. The ground under the hill was just the beginning. The system could spread through metal, water, air, and the human psyche. She could adapt to any attempts at suppression. At that moment, Adam, standing at the hangar, turned to the observers. His eyes were glowing, and a faint light was coming from inside him. Those who looked at him felt suffocated. Their pulse quickened, and the space around them trembled. It was clear that the system's activity had reached a critical point. She was preparing to go outside, and no one could predict what would happen when the dawn fully awakened. Outside, people continued to live ordinary lives. No one knew that the earth beneath them was already breathing, watching, and adapting. But those who saw the awakening understood that the world would no longer be the same. As summer drew to a close, Walbrzych was immersed in a thick, humid fog. The city seemed calm, but those who knew the truth felt a hidden threat. The land under the hill continued to have a life of its own. The electromagnetic anomalies intensified, the vibrations of the earth became constant, and the low rumble turned into something more, rhythmic, deep, like the beating of a huge heart. Adam Kowalski stood at the entrance to the hangar, now almost completely absorbed in the Rassvet system. His body was thin and translucent, his skin as pale as porcelain, and his eyes shone with a golden light. He was no longer a man in the usual sense. His consciousness was intertwined with the alien essence of the system, and every step he took caused vibrations in the metal and the air around him. Employees nearby felt the space getting heavy and their thoughts losing clarity. The system, created in the 44th year, has reached a critical stage. The metal train underground, the capsules, the hangar, and the tunnels connecting them formed a single organism. He possessed self-awareness, the ability to adapt and influence the biology and psyche of people. The capsules no longer needed a liquid medium. They now existed as autonomous units capable of manifesting consciousness. Out of them came shapes similar to humans, but devoid of density and time. They slid through the tunnels, watched, adapted. Scientists and the military, who were trying to contain the awakening of the system, realized that traditional methods were useless. The power supply, the concrete walls, the sealing of the capsules, all this caused only a reaction of the system, increasing its activity. With each passing day, the dawn became more autonomous, and its influence on people increased. The observers began to see the same images: long corridors, capsules with human silhouettes, metal doors through which someone else's energy shone. The first manifestations of the global threat have become visible on the surface. The river flowing near the hangar glowed with a golden light. The water changed its course, filling with a strange, viscous substance. The animals disappeared. The birds left the area, and the plants mutated, acquiring strange colors and shapes. People living nearby complained of bouts of weakness, dizziness, and nightmares in which they saw dungeon corridors and figures standing motionless in the dark. Adam became a mediator between the system and the outside world. His presence activated the hidden functions of the dawn, and through him the system could influence the psyche of people. Those who were nearby lost their sense of time and space, fell into a trance, saw disappeared people or their own fears manifested in the form of material images. The military has taken a radical step. They surrounded the hill with powerful barriers, blocked roads, cut off communications, and restricted access. But the system has adapted. The metal vibrated, the capsules glowed, the radio signals repeated the rhythm of people's breathing and footsteps, and the low-frequency hum caused panic. Any approach to the hangar provoked activity, and attempts to interfere only intensified it. Scientists have begun to record strange changes in biological objects nearby. People who stayed around for too long were exposed to mutations at the cellular level. The skin became covered with metallic tints, the bones changed their structure, and the psyche became connected to the alien essence of the system. Those who survived began to perceive the world differently. Time stretched, sounds and images distorted, and the boundaries between reality and illusion blurred. In mid-August, the system reached a new stage. The metal train began to move underground. The capsules slowly moved through the tunnels, and the hangar emitted a strange glow. Adam stood in the center, and light emanated from him, connecting the system into a single organism. Any outside interference only accelerated the awakening. The staff who observed this noted that the space around them was shaking, objects were shifting, distorting familiar shapes, and sounds were becoming tangible. People in the immediate vicinity began to disappear. Some returned, but their eyes were empty, their memories distorted. Those who stayed felt a sense of constant observation, felt the presence of something huge and alien, capable of adapting and penetrating the mind. At that moment, it became clear that the Rassvet system was capable of going outside, spreading its influence beyond Walbrzych. Metal, water, air, and the human psyche all became channels through which the entity could act. Any attempt to suppress her by force only led to increased activity. In the center of the hangar, Adam began to slowly raise his arms. A golden light emanated from inside it, which filled the tunnel and expanded outward. The capsules began to blink, revealing new life forms, semi-material silhouettes with human features but devoid of density. They slid along the walls, moved through the tunnels, as if testing the space. Scientists and military personnel on the surface observed this through sensors. They understood that a clash was inevitable. Any attempt at intervention could have unpredictable consequences. In a panic, some of the employees tried to leave the hangar, but the ground under the hill was shaking like a living organism, and the forces of the system held them back. At this time, Adam began to speak, although his lips barely moved. The voice seemed to come from inside everyone present. The phase is completed. Dawn is coming. The world is ready for a change. Those who heard these words experienced a feeling of penetration into the consciousness of an alien entity. Their minds were filled with images of corridors, capsules, metal doors, glowing eyes, and moving figures. New abilities of the system have been revealed. She could change the physical properties of objects, create illusions, and influence the psyche. Metal became mobile, water became viscous, and air became heavy. Every breath was difficult, and the sounds seemed tangible. People began to see the same thing: long corridors underground, capsules with moving silhouettes, and Adam's figure in the center. Then one of the scientists, a man with deep knowledge in the field of biotechnology from the time of the Reich, realized that the system could not be destroyed by force. She lives by her own laws and adapts to any impact. The only way is to create a limitation through the system itself, directing its energy inward so that it closes in on itself. The team has developed a plan. They used laboratory data on the capsules, the metal of the hangar, and biological signals coming from Adam to initiate a reverse interaction. This required the presence of Kowalski himself in the center of the system. He had to become a guide so that the essence would close. When the plan was implemented, Adam stood in the center of the hangar, arms raised, eyes glowing bright gold. The capsules began to flash. The metal walls trembled. The air became viscous, and the space around them warped. The system directed all the energy inside, creating a closed loop. Those who were nearby felt the heaviness, pressure, and vibration. The process lasted hours. Gradually, the light from inside Adam began to decrease. The capsules stopped, and the hum subsided. Metal and earth stopped vibrating, and the air became familiar. In the last moment before the end of the process, Adam smiled, a human trait that had appeared for the first time in a long time. Then the light went out, and he was gone. When the outside observers entered the hangar, they saw emptiness. The capsules were closed, the train was stationary, and the ground looked normal. No more vibrations, buzzes, or lights. The system has locked itself in. The world was saved, but the price was high. The locals gradually returned to normal life, but many remembered the events. The trees came to life again, the river cleared, and the animals returned. People who had experienced close proximity to the hangar told of nightmares and visions that remained in their memory. Rumors about the Dawn Project gradually faded. The archives were classified, and Walbrzych Hill was closed to everyone. But there were whispers. The earth remembers. The system breathes deep. And who knows if the dawn may ever awaken again. The world continued to live an ordinary life, but those who saw the awakening knew the truth. The history of mankind holds secrets that are better left untouched. And somewhere under Walbrzych, deep underground, the capsule train has forever remained a monument to the fact that a person is not able to fully control the forces that he awakens. And with that, dawn turned to darkness, completing the cycle. The world remained the same, outwardly calm, but inside, underground, the force that could once change everything still breathed.